When I was a kid, I used to think that no one did drugs. I used to think that parents and teachers warned me about drugs because they were paranoid. I didn't know the difference from uppers or downers. I didn't know that drugs could be injected, snorted, or smoked because I was a kid. At age 15, I started to chew tobacco, drink, and use recreational drugs. At age 17, I was sent to rehabilitation for 6 months, and I didn't graduate high school with my class. After 6 months of rehab, I graduated, and I went right back into my old addictions. Then I got in trouble with the law. I wasn't a criminal, I told myself. I was just addicted. When I was 20, my close friend died from overdose. When I was 23, another friend of mine killed himself with drugs. I was starting to see a face of addiction that I never saw before. I moved away, hoping my addictions wouldn't chase me. Well, I was wrong. I chewed tobacco so much that I had to have surgery, grafting pieces of my skin to my gum line. In and out of rehabs, having parts of my mouth removed and watching helplessly as some of my closest friends died around me. That didn't stop my addictions. The brain doesn't care if you spend 5 days or 5 years in rehab. It doesn't care if you get poker chips for every day you're sober. It doesn't care if you just graduated rehab, and it might even say, "Good job. Now let's go get a drink." I've successfully managed my addictions to the point where I no longer desire them, and I can tell you why. It's because I learned about what they really are and how to manage them. There's a reason why rehabs have high recidivism rates. This problem is becoming more and more recognized on a national level. Many rehab programs require you to spend a few days, a week, or even months. Then you graduate, and they tell you that you're cured. You no longer have to worry about your addictions. You can now move on with your life, they say. If only it was that simple. Learning what they are and how to manage them is when you take control of your addictions instead of them controlling you. I went from an addict to an academic. I hold 2 degrees in business and psychology and studied rehabilitation counseling. I've worked at a counseling center, and I know what addiction is like and what it does to the brain. I'm convinced that the worst thing you could do to yourself and those you love is to keep addiction a mystery, thinking that it's some abstract notion that can be wished or willed away. Scientists call the brain a team of rivals because the brain is a multiple structured system in which the different structures fight each other for dominance. And in order for the brain to operate properly, it must be at balance. To put it in simple terms, there are 2 parts of the brain, the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. This limbic system is not controlled by the conscious mind. Researchers believe that nearly 90% of subconscious human behaviors are driven by this limbic system. This is the part of the brain that reveals itself when you shiver in freezing temperatures, or when your heart beats, or when you blink your eyes. You don't consciously control these things, they just happen. The limbic system focuses on keeping us safe from danger, and it prompts us to engage in behaviors that will satisfy these needs. It doesn't focus on what's right or wrong, good or bad, moral or even immoral. However, the prefrontal cortex of the brain does. What largely makes humans different from animals is this higher functioning brain. This is the part of the brain that reasons. It's logical, and it understands consequences. Often, people with addictions describe feeling as if there are 2 different people competing against each other. One that desperately wants to quit, and the other that strongly urges them to continue. Now, instead of thinking that a craving is a sign of weakness or a lack of willpower, or the inability to keep promises or commitments, it's a pre-rational urge from the limbic system that actually hijacks the rational part of the brain. This is why many non-addicts do not understand why an addict will make commitment after commitment and break promise after promise to themselves and those that they love. Those close to an addict see them as a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where Mr. Hyde is taking over. Addicts often exhibit sudden mood changes. It's a pathological problem in which the brain is imbalanced, where the emotional and impulsive side dominates the rational side. This is why addicts seek the short-term emotional benefits of their drug over the long-term negative consequences. And whatever the drug of choice is, it's largely the same. Scientists use the term common neural currency to describe how addictive behaviors affect the brain, because they have more similarities than differences. All addictions are chemically based in the brain. The major difference is the means of administration. Alcohol and drugs enter through the mouth, While pornography enters through the eyes, addictive behaviors create a pleasurable experience by overstimulating dopamine in the limbic reward system within the brain. The limbic system is very powerful and often makes the addict feel as if they want to do something even though it's not rational. An addict's behavior may even go against his or her values and commitments. They want the cravings to stop, but often don't know how to control it. I know what it's like making commitment after commitment. I know what it's like to feel as if there's a different part of you that desperately wants to quit while the other urges you to continue. I know what it's like to have an increasing craving for a diminishing pleasure. I've been there. It feels like a losing battle. But that's because the limbic system predates the rational part of the brain. From an evolutionary standpoint, the reward system in the brain goes back 600 million years before rational thought. This reward system was found in anthropoids, invertebrate phyla, and mollusks. Pharmacological agents, pornography, and other addictive behaviors are completely new features within our modern environment. This explains why addicts will sacrifice anything and everything to obtain their drug of choice, because it activates an ancient incentive system for survival. Our brains are not prepared to deal with ready-to-access rewards, and it's getting worse. Pornography, for example, can now be pumped into our homes 24/7. But there's hope. The limbic system cannot make decisions in and of itself. It must get the approval of your higher functioning brain in order to act. The limbic system only reports what it feels. When an addict gives into this feeling, he may feel confused because the strength of the craving has superseded the pleasure itself. The addict feels as if he's been tricked. The addict's brain starts to have an increasing craving for a diminishing pleasure, and the longer the addict fails to act properly to these feelings, the harder it becomes to act at all. And in the end, the less he feels he should. Understanding the science of addiction can help you and those you love.